Our guest is the author of a very challenging book, and a book which really exposes the horrific politics that take place behind the scenes in the world of health research in the United States. The book is entitled Oncogenes, Aneuploidy, and AIDS, A Scientific Life and Times of Peter Duesberg. Let us welcome back our guest this morning, Dr. Harvey Bialy, molecular biologist and brother with attitude. Welcome, Harvey. An email comes to us from Latif Tariq. Greetings, Hotep. In the United States of America, the media always focus on the black woman and the greater black community with the effects of AIDS from the prison population. My question is, where is the media information on white women? Because in this day and time, white women are having sexual relationships with black men at an alarming rate, and some of these men are of the same prison population that black women are faced with. That from Latif Tariq.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a complex question that's mixed up with inaccurate information and racist propaganda. Mm-hmm. The truth is that it is, you can put this up there for all your listeners to easily access. The truth is that the very best real scientific studies that have ever been done and published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, the fact is in all of these studies, there have only been a few of them because the fact is so damaging to HIV orthodoxy that they don't report the studies and they don't do them even anymore. But in all of the studies, the famous Padian study, and Katie knows all of these very, very well, in which they actually determine how likely is it that if you are an HIV negative woman and you have sex with an HIV positive man, that you will contract HIV. Never mind get AIDS, just contract the virus. Well, and vice versa. If you're an HIV positive negative man and you have sex with an HIV positive woman, which is the way it's supposed to spread in Africa, for example, well, the figures are astounding. It requires 1,000, roughly, on the average, 1,000 sexual contacts between an HIV positive man and an HIV positive negative woman to convert that woman to HIV positive. 1,000. Think about how many sexual encounters. That's 1,000. Think about that. And think about that compared to what the propaganda is. Oh, Jesus, a random encounter with one person is going to do it. One person infected infects thousands, etc., etc. The reverse, which is the way that it's supposed to go in Africa because of all the prostitutes and and etc., etc. The reverse, it's 10,000. 10,000.
All right.
So what are we talking about, my dear letter writer? Mm-hmm. There is no sexual transmission of HIV to speak of. So it really doesn't matter whether it's white women or black women or Chinese women who they say are HIV positive.
You'd mentioned Oprah earlier, and Oprah's interview with a man, I'm going to be polite, called J.L. King, really became the foundation of a mass or propaganda campaign called Men on the Down Low. Even Dr. Linda Valerie from the Centers for Disease Control, whose studies were cited by several magazines and newspapers as being supportive of this, she came out later and decried this whole process and said her studies had nothing to do with men on the down low. And
men on the down low. What is that? Does that mean secret bisexuals?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh,
now
okay.
It's been said that the men on the down low are the cause of this great rise of HIV amongst African American heterosexuals.
I think it's that chimpanzee in the Cameroon myself.
Yeah, and was it the duck at the bathhouse?
and the duck and Peyton Rouse's duck.
That's right. But even if this men on the down low had some legitimacy, it doesn't account for the fact that the numbers of bisexual black men in this country are significantly lower than the numbers of bisexual white men. And so, therefore, the white woman in the San Francisco Bay Area would have to herself be undergoing an explosion of men on the down low related HIV heterosexual infection. And there's no data there to support that.
Yeah, well, people need to know that the real transmission frequency is measured by long-term studies of hundreds of discordant couples. A discordant couple is one in which one partner is HIV positive and the other partner is HIV negative, who had all kinds of sex for 10, 15 years with condoms, without condoms, drug-assisted, undrug-assisted, sex of every variety. In this famous Padian study, which was conducted with discordant couples in the San Francisco Bay Area, right, the heart of AIDS. In all of these, something like 400,000 couple hours of sex over the years, there was exactly 0 conversions. 0. The numbers that I quoted of one in 1,000 and 1 in 10,000 are not the result of some hard numbers from this study. They're the result of the fact that when this study was completed and all the computer results from all the multi-centers came in, and Dr. Padian began to analyze them and saw that, oh my God, every one of the important columns from every one of the center studies over all these years is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, that she got out her the equivalent of her slide rule and made some really bizarre meta-mathematical extrapolations and came out with this 1 in 1,000 and 1 in 10,000 so that there was something to put in the paper. Mm-hmm. And then either she or the editors of the journal told an outright lie in the abstract of the paper, which is the only thing, as you know, that most people ever read.
Right.
In the abstract, they put a fabrication, they put in a lie that there was they gave some number, I don't remember what the number is, but they gave some small, low percentage of seroconversions, like 4% or 6%, so they could have something there. But when you go into the paper and look at the data, which is all in a big table 3 in the paper, the important column is 0, not 0.04.
And yeah, I am familiar with that, and that was shocking because many times I myself find using the abstract as a convenience, but it is in the heart of that 20, 30-page scientific peer-reviewed document that one can really get true understanding. I can recall reading some 22 pages into one document before I came up with a paragraph that says something to the extent of using these rapid assay HIV antibody tests in a low prevalence population yields such a incidence of false positives. And if these tests were used against a white suburban housewife, a very low prevalence group, in all likelihood, all positive tests will be false positives, and positive predictive values plummet to 0.
Absolutely true. And guess what's going to happen if they ever do start testing everybody? Gee, there's going to suddenly be a new epidemic of AIDS.
Yeah, so of HIV infection and their subsequent development.
If you actually test everybody, and do not rely on the getting your 1 million figure from extrapolations from testing Army recruits and random Red Cross tests.
And people in public health clinics.
Yeah. And you start testing here, that 1 million could easily go to 2 million or 1.7 million or 1.5 million for sure. And then, my God, that's 500,000 AIDS cases that we didn't know about. See, we were so right to test, and it's like the bird flu and everything else that can terrify people. Nobody will stop and say, certainly not a single reporter, will stop and say, wait a second, if all of these millions of people were walking around
We've got two more emails I'm going to share with you before we'll have to begin to wrap up our program. First email from Edward. He writes, "Greetings. I enjoy this show and most of your shows very much. What is
Except
the
this one.
What is the difference in other STDs?" And again, that term he's using, other STDs, is also buying into the lie, right?
Exactly. That's the problem right there. It's
right.
So trapped in our minds that we can't get out of it.
Yeah.
The difference between HIV/AIDS and sexually transmitted diseases is that one is a concocted government mythological invention, not a real mythological invention, and the others are real sexually transmitted diseases.
Okay, so I'll continue his question just as he wrote it. What is the difference in other STDs, like herpes, for instance, that's a virus that supposedly lays dormant deep in the nerve endings, and something triggers the herpes virus to be active either orally or in the pelvis area? Are these viruses related? How are these viruses activated?
Okay. All right. Your question it has both the fallacy of the first part, but it also is an intelligent, beyond that, it's an intelligent question. That
True.
is to say, what is the relation between herpes or even hepatitis viruses, which can lay dormant and become reactivated and cause disease, and a virus like HIV? All right. The difference between night and day, basically. These other viruses are big DNA viruses that have these dormancies. And the crucial point is that they cause disease before they are dormant. They cause disease weeks, sometimes months, but generally weeks after infection, when the virus is present, rapidly replicating, killing lymph cells in the liver, and making the genital lesions or the cold sores, whatever it does. Then when the immune system responds and the antibodies are produced, the virus is basically eliminated, but because it biochemically can hide in a way very similar to the way that the HIV genome can go to sleep inside a cell, a small percentage of infected cells are converted into a form in which they harbor the sleeping genetic genes of the virus. And now something can sometimes happen in which those sufficient biochemical switches are thrown that virus begins to make that virus genetic information begins to direct synthesis of new virus particles, and you get a reactivation of the disease. The immune system, and this only happens when the immunity against the virus falls, which it does quite naturally after a while when the acute infection phase is over. In a short time, the immune system responds, the virus goes back to sleep, and you have a chronic herpes infection, or a chronic hepatitis infection, or a chronic shingles. Rubella does this as well. And that's perfectly normal virology. The scenario that one is said to has to believe with AIDS, or works with AIDS, is that there is no disease until 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years after the virus has been completely neutralized. It is never reactivated in any significant way, and it doesn't do anything at any time. So, when you present that to a virologist, and you can't challenge them past their first stupid waffle answer. See, the first waffle answer is the one that we just got in the email. Mm-hmm. But you never, ever, ever get these people to stick around long enough to answer the response. Mm-hmm. It's just like they continually, when you remind people that chimpanzees, which are the closest relative that human beings have in the primate world, and are susceptible hosts for every single virus that causes a disease in man, and that every single virus that really causes a disease in man, when it's given to a chimpanzee, reproduces that disease in the chimpanzee. And yet for 20 or more years now, hundreds of chimpanzees have been infected with HIV, which they are susceptible to, and yet not one of them has contracted AIDS. When you confront them with that, they tell you about macaque monkeys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, with the same kind of in the same kind of deflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just goes.
If you're defending a lie, you can only defend it with obfuscations and other lies.
Mm-hmm.
You can't defend a lie with the truth.
Oh.
When you're defending a false proposition,
mm-hmm.
it can only be defended by other falsehoods.
Yes, true. And eventually, the person consuming them becomes so confused that they then fall on almost a religious type of superstition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If they weren't already sufficiently confused.
Last email we'll have for the program from Adine Kachisi. Adine writes, "Greetings, Brother Keaty and Dr. Harvey. Great show. Maybe to practically win against the HIV/AIDS myths, we need to just fight to convince the world that nutritional supplements cure AIDS and just ignore the HIV issue." And that reminds me of the work of a medical researcher. He's now an ancestor. His name is Dr. Charles Sally from Uganda, who developed a wonderfully complex nutritional compound called Mariandina. And he was having wonderful success at taking Ugandan AIDS-diagnosed people and converting them forward to their natural health using his nutritional-based program.
Yeah. Problem is, it's not a problem, but the real situation is, look, in Africa, everything that's called AIDS is basically a disease of poverty and malnutrition. So if people are well fed and well nourished and drink clean water, then there is no AIDS. So everything that is promotes good nutrition and general good health is a prophylactic and a cure, a quote cure for AIDS. But there are some people who are so far gone with their tuberculosis, you can give them every herbal supplement in the world and fill them full of every good calorie, and they're still going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't, in the way, the problem is, again, that by calling every disease under the sun, when it occurs in Africa, AIDS, you make what could be rational discussion into mush.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling definition.
It becomes mush. Two people are talking about AIDS and they're not talking about the same thing.
That's right. Yeah, one person may be talking about tuberculosis, another talking about malaria, and in the case of the great musician Fela Kuti, who died of a heart failure, they called it the complications of the AIDS virus.
Yeah, this is complications of 10 years of police brutality.
I've even seen in South Africa where a person, having been severely injured in a car accident, lived in the hospital for up to a week after the car accident and succumbed to probably a hospital-contracted infectious disease, then died, and that person's death was blamed on AIDS.
Oh, yeah, indeed. I thought you were going to tell me a version of, and this is a true story, of something I heard from a doorman at the Sheraton Hotel in Kampala in 1993 when I was with the Meditail, Joan Shetton and her crew, making a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
The doorman was really cool. And again, I was saying, if you talk to anybody, first he thought that we were an ordinary, like a WHO team, and was very reticent. But when he realized we were on the other side, he opened up. And he told me the following. He said he had a friend. He said, "Oh, Doc, everything you're saying is completely true. Listen, I had a friend who got hit by a car, who was HIV positive, and got hit by a lorry right over there," pointed to the street. And his death was recorded as an AIDS-related suicide.
Wow. Unbelievable.
That was incorporated into the documentary.
Well, Geneva needed that. They needed that death so to fit their computer projections. We have had a wonderful conversation with you. 1 hour turned into 2 hours, turned into 3 hours. We probably could go 3 more, but let's do that on another day. And also your book, Oncogenes, Aneuploidy, and AIDS is available on the internet?
It's all over. You can find it all over the internet, yeah.
Okay, so they'll just search for your name, Harvey, Harvey, Bialy, Bialy. Search for that. You will get contact. Final words you want to leave with your LIB Radio family before we cut you off.
Peace and love.